Gosh, you're very good, aren't you? We're just waiting for our online broadcast to start. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. It's an absolute delight to see you all here at this Modern Work Experience Let's Make It Work 2025 event. My name is Nikki Morgan. I'm chair of the Careers and Enterprise Company, the national body for careers education in England. I'm absolutely delighted to be opening today's event, uniting leaders from education, business, government and the careers sector around a shared vision for modern work experience. Now, it's fair to say that we have been overwhelmed by interest in today's event. We've had over 3,000 online registrations and many more partners wanting to join us in the room. So hello to all of you, and particular hello to all of you who are watching online. Your participation is just one indicator of how important our shared agenda is, to realise an ambition to make modern work experience accessible to all young people. So let me start with a few thank yous for making today possible. So firstly, can I thank Linklaters, our hosts, and for being such a pivotal employer partner in our collective mission to help all young people find their best next step. I want to thank our colleagues in the Department for Education for their continued involvement, commitment and support for the Careers and Enterprise Company's work. You are helping to drive innovation and improvement across the careers system. I'd like to thank the many educators, employers and strategic partners joining us today, in person and online, for your ongoing collaboration to help every young person take their best next step. And I'm particularly pleased to see so many industries represented here today. We've got NHS England, the Armed Forces, the Nuclear Industry Association and Innovate UK, alongside representatives from construction, film and media, digital, financial services and so many other sectors. It's fantastic to have you all here. We're really, really grateful. And although they didn't put it on my script, I'm just going to thank the CEC team as well, who have done an outstanding job in pulling today's events together in both preparation of work experience, as we will talk about, but also in this event. I am really, really grateful, and also grateful to my fellow board members, some of whom are here in the room, some of whom I know are watching online. So let me set the scene. Today is about using work experience as one of the most practical and powerful tools to help prepare young people for that vital next step from education and into their working lives. It's where the classroom meets the real world. It's where young people can see how the knowledge and skills they're developing apply in the workplace. And it's where employers can spot and shape the talent pipelines of the future. And why now? Well, the world of work, as you will all know, is changing faster than ever, driven by technology and AI, and underlined by skills shortages across all priority sectors. Despite these technological developments and the need for accompanying technical skills, employers say consistently that they need young people with the right employability skills and behaviours to help them to succeed. Essential skills that enable effective communication, creativity, teamwork, resilience and adaptability. And schools and colleges are equally clear that work experience is one of the most powerful ways for their students to build those skills. Now, last week we published the results from our Future Skills Questionnaire, which is now completed by over 330,000 young people. It is the largest data set of its kind in England. And it gives us a really powerful insight into how career ready our students feel and their assessment of their essential skills. So a few headlines. Overall, we see that students' career readiness improves from when they start secondary school up to year 11. That's when they're taking GCSEs. Understanding of apprenticeships nearly doubles from years 7 to 11. And confidence rises in their planning for their next step, backed by their growth in their creativity and their problem solving. So this is young people offering a clear testament about the difference that sustained, high-quality careers education can make as they move through their school and college experience. But there are evidence too about where there are gaps and there is more to do. Only 2/3 of Year 11s feel confident discussing their skills in an interview. Confidence in leadership and listening is declining as students move through their education experience. And for those eligible for free school meals, and for girls in particular, they start off at a disadvantage, which seems to be difficult for them to overcome throughout their time at school. So these insights from young people make a compelling case for why a new approach to work experience is needed to build their confidence, their skills and their self-belief that can't be taught in the classroom alone. And so that's why we want to introduce and to discuss what we mean by modern work experience. We developed what we call EqualX, a multi-year, multi-experience model to raise the quality of work experience for all young people. The goal is to offer real-world insight, skill development and networking opportunities for all young people, and particularly those furthest removed from opportunity. And we have spent the past year testing that approach. That's why I wanted to thank my CEC colleagues from across the country through pilots and with strategic authority partners. We have worked with schools and employers co-designing projects that run throughout the academic year. Multiple meaningful experiences connecting young people to different sectors. Partnerships putting skills development, not just observation, at the heart of experience. And I'm pleased to announce that we have launched our Modern Work Experience Pilot Insight Briefing. Here it is. You all have a copy in front of you, which gives rich evaluation on the first year of these independent pilots. Please do take a copy before you leave. Now, already we are seeing strong early promise that this approach works. In Manchester, 92% of students said they now have a better understanding of what employers are looking for. And in a KPMG-led pilot working with schools in areas of high deprivation, 83% of students reported a greater awareness of their own skills and talents. So now let's turn to the purpose of today. Today, as billed by the event title, is about us joining forces to make it work. We know success lies in the strength of the partnerships in this room and beyond, national, local, education and business partnerships. The Government Skills White Paper published last month offers a vision to work towards, and I quote, a minimum of 2 weeks worth, and that worth word is really important, 2 weeks worth of work experience broken down into at least 1 week's worth of work experience activities in years 7 to 9, and a further week's worth of placement in years 10 to 11. It should be available to all, regardless of family background, and with a clear aim to offer greater flexibility to individuals, schools and employers. So this is very much a new attempt to break away from the traditional 2-week block work experience that for too long has been found to be inflexible, impractical and out of reach for many students and employers. Our shared mission is also found at the heart of education policy through the recently published Curriculum and Assessment Review and the government's response to that. Recognition of the important things that schools and colleges provide for their students every day and beyond the national curriculum, employability skills developed by enrichment activities and work experience that provides young people with those vital skills and attributes that we know employers are looking for, and also enables education to become real and relevant for every young person. So today is very much about realising ambition and building momentum and turning policy into practice, and we will ask you for your help with that. We want to hear from you about how we can scale quality and coverage to ensure this innovative approach can achieve full inclusion for young learners, aligned to the needs of all businesses, large and small, and across all sectors of our economy. Anyway, that's enough from me. I hope to set out the parameters for you all. My job is to introduce Gemma Marsh, who is the Deputy CEO of Skills England, who is going to talk to us about the impact of high-quality careers education and modern work experience as part of the National Skills Agenda. Gemma, thank you so much for being here today. Let's give her a warm welcome.
Morning, everybody in the room, and morning online. I only clocked the 3,000 people online on the way down, so that was something to look forward to. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Gemma Marsh, as I said, Deputy CEO of Skills England. And for some of you in the room, you won't know what Skills England is. So we are here to understand, mobilise and simplify the system. Our strapline is about better skills for better jobs. We try and make things as simple as possible to connect people into jobs and learning, and we try and make it as simple as we possibly can. We're very new. We only formed in the 1st of June, and we're still finding our feet. We worked within DFE, and then we are now part of the Department for Work and Pensions, which offers us a really, really great opportunity to connect more people into more jobs, and it's just simple like that. I've come from Greater Manchester, and I know we've got some panel members. Work experience I was really passionate about work experience, and the work that Careers and Enterprise Company have done over many, many years in Greater Manchester and in all the other areas. Place really matters. And I think that's where Skills England really comes into its own. It's about trying to connect that kind of national picture with actually what happens locally. It's one thing to say employers, need to do more, but every employer, every area is completely different. And the young people in that area require difference. So I think here today, it's so great to see everybody, and obviously everybody online. But what more can we do? And I think that message is loud and clear. How do we scale up best practice? How do we learn from the best? How do we ensure that all of our young people get the opportunities that they need? And that is not an easy thing to do. We know that from the industrial strategy, we know that demand for employment is growing in our priority sectors. But what young person knows what a priority sector is? I mean, goodness me, we don't make it very easy, do we? And I think that's where Skills England comes into its own, really trying to make it as simple as possible. We have the data, we have oodles of data, and working with companies like CEC and with our strategic authorities, that's the national data. We know where the vacancies are, we know where the jobs are. Our job then is to make sure that people understand how they get there. Whether you're 14 or 44, the job is the same, but the pathway to it is different, and we need to ensure that our young people understand that. Obviously, Baroness Morgan talked about employability skills. If somebody could bottle that and tell us what that actually is, it's so difficult to teach. I speak to lots of colleges and lots of school leaders, and it means different things to different people. But we've got to ensure that our young people understand the job. If I can't see it, I can't touch and feel it, I don't know what that is. And obviously, the changes in technology that we are seeing, you blink, you miss it, and the job is different. So that is our responsibility. Skills England works across the Department for Work and Pensions. It works with all of our government departments. We have a role to play nationally. You'll have seen the launch of the Youth Review. You know that NEETs is high. We know all of that. Work experience is absolutely fundamental to ensuring that young people have that line of sight to where they need to get to. I am passionate about that. We have always been passionate about that. And I think as Skills England, we're asking ourselves the same thing. What role can we play to work with you as employers and as areas and place to really add more into a system that is very, very complicated and very, very noisy at this moment in time. I was an enterprise advisor in Greater Manchester, and I worked within a SEND school. And that was a real eye-opener for me, because when we talk about every young person is not the same. And when we talk about NEETs, they are not a homogenous group. They need something different, and they need employers to really invest in them. So how do we do that? How do we make meaningful work experience? 2 weeks work experience is a lot to ask for an employer. But actually, how do we make it more simple? Because the value that young person will get from it, all young people, will just be, it will set them on their pathway. We need to make sure that the provision is there. So working with the Department for Education and with DWP, We've introduced things like shorter apprenticeships, and we've introduced apprenticeship units from April next year. These tangible things where employers have said, the system just isn't working, it's not working for me. So actually, how do we adapt that? So there are things that young people can bounce onto, but they need to know what their starting point is. They need to understand what their labour market looks like in their area. You know, when we talk about labour market information and LMI and every acronym that we can throw, you know, it's not easy and it's not the same in every place. You know, as I say, I've come from a mayoral strategic authority. The value of place is massive. You know, really reaching all of our employers is tricky. You know, you are here preaching to the converted, but actually there are SMEs, there are other organisations that want to get involved and just don't know how to. And our role should be to make it as simple as possible. Hide that wiring so that all of our young people can access just that opportunity. Because for some of our young people, it's just as far as they can see. And, you know, it's just to the end of their road or it's just in their area. And, you know, how do we get them around? How do we make sure that we can make sure that our young people are mobile and they do get those experiences? And there are different ways of doing it, using technology. You know, there's loads of things that you as employers and educators and mayoral combined authorities can help with that. I think Skills England will provide the data, provide that kind of national picture, and then we need to make sure that a young person understands their journey. And if it's not working, tell us it's not working. Because a young person in Carrington, you know, is different to a young person in Clapham. You know, and they will all have different experiences. But I think by coming together, and we've seen it, you see it in the careers hubs, you see it in the work that CEC does, you see it in place. People want to help, but it's tricky. And I think, you know, changes in lots of things that are happening with employers. We've got lots of asks of employers. But so we've got to make it as simple as possible so that all of our young people can access that. So Skills England is here to try and hide some of that wiring and work with you and really shout about some of those fantastic things that we've seen in the launch report now, but building on that. And also then tackling and feeding back into government policy. What does it look like? How could we make it better? What isn't working? What is working? What is amazing? And let's really shout about that. So I'm really excited to be here today. As I say, really passionate about kind of young people. That's one of the reasons I kind of took the role at Skills England. It's about how do you connect? How do you mobilise? How do you grow? How do you take that national picture and bring it down locally? And then how do you make it so somebody that is 14, 15, 16 understands what that job is and what that sector is? And then the other side of that is making the language of skills understandable for our businesses. We talk about a level 4, level 5 job to many people. They kind of look at you like you've got two heads. You know, it's like, I'm not quite sure what you mean. We've got to say, these are the skills, these are the qualities, these are the attributes that these people have, and they are going to thrive in your business. You've just got to give them a chance. So I think that language of skills, careers and employers has to come together. And I think simplifying that is a role that we can absolutely play with people in the room, but obviously across government as well. So I'm really excited to hear the panel discussion and obviously be part of the round table. So thank you very much.
Well, you heard Gemma's passion and commitment there. Gemma, thank you for being an enterprise advisor. We look forward as CEC to working incredibly closely with Skills England. We very much have a shared mission, and you're absolutely right, place really does matter as well, and we should always remember that. You emphasise the collaboration between education, employers and local leaders that captures that truly joined up skills system that you were talking about that will deliver for every young person. Now, in a moment, I'm going to hand over. They've been sitting very patiently here. I'm going to hand over to Olly Newton, who is the Executive Director of the Edge Foundation, who is going to lead us through our first panel session. Olly is no stranger to the world of educational pathways and young people. He's the perfect facilitator for this first discussion on how we activate meaningful workplace opportunities that align students' learning with the world of work. But before then, we're going to have a short video to bring to life our vision for work experience. Here we go.
Okay, deep breath. Big day. Do I look smart or like a bored mum with shoes? To answer that. Okay, so me. I'm 15, I've not got any connections, no uncle sat in some big office, no one's giving me a leg up. Just this feeling like I want to make something of myself. I want to see what I could do and who I could be. My teacher's always bigging me up, reckons I got talent, gets prog for giddy, talking about careers, destinations, and well, part of me wants to believe that. I really do, but I can't see it. I can't picture myself in those places. Thing is, loads of us, we've got dreams bigger than our postcodes, bigger than this box we've been shoved in. But now they're talking about giving every young person 10 days worth of work experience, proper chances to see and try stuff. That's massive. Because most of us, we don't even know what's out there. All we see is closed doors, jobs that look like they're for someone else, but not us. And honestly, work experience, no one ever tells you what to say. Like, do I shake hands or high five? Feel like I'd high five, accidentally, and then just like die. So yeah, this guarantee, it can't just be words on paper, a boring office tour, or a pretend job where you're basically just like furniture at a corner. Nah, it's gotta be real. Proper chance to try loads of different things. Real stuff that makes you think, I belong here. I could do this, you know, I might even be brilliant at this. But let's be honest, this guarantee won't be easy. I mean, it's dead easy to just let it all fail. All talk, no action. But if that happens, it's people like me who miss out, and we don't get another shot. So that's why I'm asking you. Let's make it real. Make it count. And not just for the lucky few, but for all of us. This is a once-in-a-generation chance. Get this right, and you don't just change my future. You change the story for a whole generation. So please, let's make it work. I love you.
Wonderful. What a great video, and thank you so much, Nikki, for that lovely introduction. I was teasing Nikki this morning because I think the last time I saw her, I said, "Good morning, Secretary of State." So it's been a little while since we've seen each other, but absolutely lovely to be here. And what an important area that we're talking about today. So I spent the first 10 years of my career at the Department for Education, and the very first thing that I worked on my first day of work was 14 to 19 diplomas. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but some of you will remember those. And it really just straight out of the door showed me how powerful that connection between employment and education could be. And how important it would be to kind of bring that into the classroom through work experience, through great careers advice. So I think it's so lovely to be here now, you know, 20 years later, really making a success of this. And what a great, powerful video there about why that's important. I'm now Executive Director at the Edge Foundation. Edge is an independent educational charity and foundation all about trying to make education more relevant to the real world, more relevant to those skills that are in Skills Builder, more relevant to those to everything that young people are going to need for their lives as well. So we're big champions of a broad curriculum, of things like work experience, great careers advice, and then great vocational education as well. So this is an area, as I hope you can tell, that I'm very passionate about. So a few rules of engagement. It wouldn't be an education event if we didn't have an exam question. So the one for this panel, but there won't be any written tests, is how do we build a national culture where work experience is transformative, not transactional? So I think we've all seen the power of work experience to transform, whether we're coming to this from education or from business. How can we make that a reality for all young people? And we're going to bring that equity angle in really strongly as well, because it is absolutely about all young people, whether they've got connections or not. We're going to be talking principally about work experience kind of pre-16. I care about the stuff post-16 as well, so happy to have another chat about that sometime, but we've got to have some bounds on the conversation. And we'll be drawing on questions that have been submitted by the audience beforehand, so thank you for everyone who put those in. So I've got an amazing panel. I'm going to ask each of them just to introduce themselves briefly, and then we're going to have a little chat between us, and then we're going to broaden it out. So Kath, it's absolutely lovely to have you here. Just say a little bit about you, and then we'll talk a bit about your programmes.
Yep, sure. So I'm Kath Burnett. I'm the Head of Audit at KPMG. That's my day job, but I'm also very lucky to be our sponsoring partner for our Opening Doors to Opportunities programme that we run at KPMG.
Brilliant. And Nikki mentioned KPMG's involvement in the pilot, so thank you so much for that.
Pleasure.
Tell us a little bit more about that Opening Doors to Opportunity programme.
So the Opening Doors to Opportunities programme is quite broad. We cover both primary and secondary students. But the aim of the programme is to help build skills for over 1 million students by 2030. Those skills can be focused very much on numeracy and literacy, but actually also cover the type of skills that Nikki was talking about in terms of leadership, problem solving, and going into the types of skills that link into the world of work. So one important part of Opening Doors is that we run career insights days within KPMG. We're very lucky to have a network of offices up and down the country, and so we bring students into our offices for those career insights. They have the opportunity to meet our people. We do some practical work examples with them. We really do talk about the skills that they will need and how actually they have a lot of those skills as part of their day-to-day what they do at school, and we try and help make that link for them. Over the summer, we actually expanded that programme to have Career Insights Day that had half a day with KPMG and then half a day with another employer. So things like construction, project management, banking, technology. So that really helped, actually, that collaboration really helped broaden out what the students were seeing as part of those Career Insights Day. I would stress is that the aim is not to recruit people from KPMG. We offer opportunities for the students that come in and help them understand what the opportunities might be at KPMG, but actually it's really about giving those students the confidence and the experience of being in the workplace and understanding the skills that will be important as they transition from school into the workplace.
Thank you so much, Kath. Yeah, other businesses are available, like on the BBC.
Exactly.
But I love what you're saying there about helping them translate, because that's so powerful. We did some research a few years ago, which was looking at, the connection between giving young people those experiences and then what they might say in an interview. And so many of them had the experiences at school, like the school teacher or the business had gone out of their way to give them that experience, but they hadn't just drawn out, like, let's just talk about how that gives you better communication, and then let's give you that bit that helps you then describe that in an interview. So it feels like that's such a powerful thing that you're doing, to kind of draw out all that they're doing, all they have inside them already, and just show them how to present it.
How to present it,
Such a valuable thing. Obi, welcome. Do you want to just introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Obi Bamidele, CEO of Uptree. Essentially, Uptree was founded, when you talk about the video that you've just seen, was why we were founded, really to tackle the inequalities that exist still today for young people. Basically, we find that a lot of young people still don't have those connections, is who you know, and we're basically set up to ensure that we say our mission is for employers everywhere to offer sort of unique work experiences to young people. So I think for us, we've been going for 10 years, and I'll sort of share some of the things we've done up to date. We've built a national network of more than 770 schools. We've partnered with over 100 employers, KPMG being one of them. We've supported over 130,000 student applications through our platform, and we've delivered over 650 unique work experiences to date. Our mission really is to just build on that. We want to see particularly young people who are underrepresented, who are disadvantaged, gain real access to meaningful work experience.
I love that. It's so important. This equity piece is just so strong, and I think that as Nikki was saying at the start, that's so important about the government's commitment here. It has to be all young people, not just those who've got the connections to set things up themselves. And you use the word unique a lot in what you talk about. Just tell us what you mean a bit about like the uniqueness of those placements.
Yeah, we often use the word unique experiences of work, and what that means essentially is that we say unique work experience should demystify careers for young people. I think in the video, as you saw, a lot of young people don't have a very limited view of what the world of work looks like. And the experience should be able to break that down for them so that they can see and feel, and they can see themselves and have that sense of belonging. But also, we talked about moving away from traditional forms of work experience where a young person goes and does a 5-day placement and is sort of in a corner not really engaging. So it should be meaningful, so they should be able to apply a lot of that knowledge. When we say it's most effective when employers are able to bring real work situations and bring it to life for them. Because also that then makes them feel more ambitious. They go back to school and they have that sort of relevance, because young people still struggle to connect education to the world of work. But then also we say that it should be, it's a two-way thing. It's also the employer as well. I mean, I think because it's important for employers to understand what meaningful engagement with young people looks like, because often if the employers or the volunteers, employees who work with young people at sort of work experience days, they are able to, if they're able to engage with them, ask the right questions, make them feel comfortable, just remove all of those sort of discomforts that young people feel. Like the girl was saying in the video, do I high five, do I not do that? And that's where we stand, we come in. We prepare young people to be career ready before they even go into a placement. But I also want to touch on the fact that work experience should be modern, so it should look like different things. It could be a virtual insight day. It could be 2-day sort of work experience, bringing a group of students across different schools. But at the heart of it, it should ensure that it's inclusive.
Love that. I mean, some words that I think are going to come up again and again. So unique, meaningful, relevant. I think those are really important. I mean, the unique point speaks to what Gemma was saying earlier. I think certainly I was guilty of this when I was in the kind of policy-making space, thinking of neat young people. And there's just like this mass of 1 million young people. Every single one of them has a different story. Everyone has a different button that you can push to make them excited to engage them. So that uniqueness, I think, is really important. But you're right, it's meaningful for both sides, isn't it? This can be a really positive experience for businesses. Exactly. And I've seen, particularly some of our junior members of staff, like having a work experience student, and that's transformational for their management practice as well. So it can be meaningful in different directions as well. Emily, welcome. It's lovely to see you again. Do you want to say who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, I'm Emily Vero. I'm the CEO of Three Spires Trust, which is a primary and secondary trust. And we've had the privilege, actually, of being part of the pilot for Equilex, which has been great.
Nice, that's amazing. And I've had the privilege of seeing some of your work in action, but not everyone has. So tell us a little bit about how you kind of embed this stuff into your DNA, so it's not just a career session, it's part of everything that you do.
Yeah, so Careers for Three Spires is actually part of our next-gen curriculum, so it is one of our strategic priorities. We recognised, actually, that we needed to make the connections early for our young people for their next steps post-16, and that would really incentivise young people and, up the motivation and the engagement levels. And actually what we found is that by making careers an instrumental part of what we do, that actually we're more cognisant of thinking about the labour market. And that's really critical, we feel, as educators, that, we remedy what could be perceived as the disjunct between education and employment by really just heightening an awareness of what we need to do on behalf of our young people. So we don't want it to feel tokenistic. We really want it to be, as you've said, relevant and meaningful and worthwhile. And we perceive every teacher to be a teacher of careers critically. We think that's a really important part of the work that we're trying to drive. And what we're seeing is some really innovative practice. There are different ways of educating young people about the workplace and the labour market. And we feel that, typically, possibly, we have been one-dimensional, and we've just, allowed children to think, well, if you move into the NHS, you've got to be a medic, or, and there's a whole plethora of roles within every organisation. So we want to start early. We want our young people from year 7 onwards to sense that actually it's interwoven. Careers education is interdependent, it's interconnected with their learning. So we're translating the learning in every subject discipline to what the employability skill might look like, for all the reasons that have just been illustrated on screen, that actually it gives our children a cultural capital. It gives them, it empowers them, it lifts them up, and that's really, really important. We don't want to think that the young people are getting into year 11 bereft of the skills to have agency to represent themselves well when they go into the workplace. So it's about, it is about mobilising that sense of, empowerment on behalf of young people.
Yeah, I love that, and that really picks up the theme both from Kath and from Olly about relevance. And it just speaks very strongly to me I think in the past we've had discussions with kind of politicians and other educators who think, you know, every hour spent on work experience is an hour that you're not spending on English and maths. And what you're saying is actually it's both and. Like, this brings things to life. This shows young people why it's relevant. This gets them excited about their lessons. So we can be knowledge rich and rigorous, and we can also have amazing experiences that bring it to life.
Absolutely, and actually as part of the work that we've done looking at the job landscape of 2030, as educators we can see the other elements of our practice that we need to consider deeply. So we can see, you know, digital literacy underpinning most of those jobs, you know, so therefore we're changing the emphasis on what we need to do to ensure that, you know, we are conversant with all of the skills that young people are going to need. So it's an education in itself, thinking about what we need to do on behalf of our young people to serve them well. And I think, you know, that as a workforce, educators quite often have gone through a particular linear route through, and therefore not necessarily as cognizant with some of the other routes in vocational, technical, you know, apprenticeships. And so actually we need to upskill as a workforce to ensure that we represent really well our young people.
I love that. And I don't want to say the F word on stage, fun, but it can really make the job of a teacher more fun, can't it? Like, making those connections, bringing it to life, remembering the connections with industry. So yeah, fun and education don't usually go together, but let's say it.
And actually, it opens the scope of innovation for co-construction, because what we want to be doing is we want to have a curriculum offer that speaks to young people's life chances. So, you know, what we're doing is moving beyond working potentially in isolation and saying, actually, we need the expertise that sits beyond our sector to really open the doors for our young people.
Brilliant, thank you. Nicola, very welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Nicola McLeod, and I'm the Director of Education, Work and Skills at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. It's very long. But what that means, but who we are actually is a mayoral strategic authority with a very long history of collaboration, working with a wide range of partners and spending time looking at how place and devolution can transform the lives of our people and the outcomes that they get.
Perfect. And as Gemma said, place really matters. We've obviously got a strong GM representation here, which is great. And people on the screen, on the 3,000 will be like cheering if they're from GM. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about that theme of how you've driven this kind of change through a place-based lens.
Yeah, it's... Well, and you heard it, Gemma was pretty much saying the things that I was going to say, actually. What I can do is take it further. So I guess for the last decade, we've worked with our 10 localities, and within that, you've got employers, you've got the VCSFE sector, you've got schools and the colleges, the specialist providers. And we've strengthened our approach to careers education, information, advice and guidance. That's been really important in terms of what is that shared purpose and what is that commitment, particularly to those who get left behind. So it's not just been about growing broad careers advice and guidance through our education institutions, bringing in more employers. It's about, well, who's left behind? How do you align that with some of the participation work that we want to do in terms of reducing those young people not in education, employment and training? And one of the ways we've done it regionally, and I think it's a brave and bold way to address this challenge, which brings the growth lens and the sectoral lens to the participation journey of people, is through the Greater Manchester Baccalaureate. And that's a mayoral ambition to think about what is our intentional curriculum offer for young people. How do they have that line of sight, and what's the journey they need to take through those very intentional pathways towards good technical education, good technical jobs and prosperity. So that's been really important, and employers are at the heart of that because they're represented in each of our kind of technical sector gateways. Linked to today, I think what's really, really important, and I've heard it, and I heard it said on the video, is around that's all well and good, and you can paint a different picture and you can describe it in a different way, and you effectively move deck chairs around. But what you have to do is be very intentional, and that's why the EqualX work with the Careers and Enterprise Company has been fantastic for us. It's how intentional are we with our young people to help them have that line of sight? What are the interventions, and how can some of the work that we do expand those horizons and not limit them? The first thing I had levelled when we talked about the baccalaureate was, well, isn't that just pigeonholing? I said, no, this is about expanding that set of horizons. So one of the questions I think in the brief was, how do we make it transformational from that transactional to transformational. I think it's really important that it is place-led. The employers are in place, they're in communities, and they're on doorsteps that lead you to the next step, to the next step. Young people grow up in those spaces. We write a lot of policies, we write a lot of plans, and they're meaningless unless they're actually real, and you've all talked about it, making it feel real. And it has to reflect their identities, their challenges, their opportunities. I do think it needs to go beyond the mission that is just around, well, it's your skills pipeline, why aren't you doing more? It's a very blunt kind of tool to talk about. There's a civic ambition for me around that mission of, I hear a lot, and especially in board meetings about employees, that we blame young people for not having the skills, and so it's somebody else's fault. But actually, the mission is it's not their fault, it's our fault as adults. So what more can we do? So that's a massive part of the work. And then fundamentally, as we've been looking at Equal X, as we've been thinking about our design and planning, as we've put equity at the design, it's a design principle, we start with that. And that's what we have in mind. So I think overall, if we think about modern experiences of the workplace, modern work experience, and making it transformative, it's relational, it's about the relationships, it's not about the procedures. We get bogged down in, can't do that, how many hours of work is that going to be, who's going to do the admin, what's the health and safety? But ultimately, we're building connections with real people in real communities, and they are long-lasting and will carry those young people through their lives. So that's really important. And I heard Emily talk about this. It's around that agency that keeps those doors open. Our gateways are keeping doors open forever and not closing people off. I think, sorry, I forgot the name of the young person, but she said very clearly, I'm not going to be limited by my postcode. Well, it starts with that postcode. Of course, that's where they are. You meet them where they are, and then you take it out and you open those doors. So what would it take for me? I think that was one of my questions, if I can. Ollie, is okay. We talk about more money, and I don't mean, when I say more investment, I don't mean more money. I don't mean more money. I mean, I don't think we're leveraging all the investments that are put together in a place to do this well. So there'll be a bit over there and a bit over here, and people say, I haven't got enough money to do that. But actually, if we all come together and say, what can we pull? We might actually change something quite fundamentally. I think place does need more freedom to act. We need agency to say, let's try something new, and it might not work, but that's okay. And I think, going back to my last point, we need a new narrative about not painting out that young people are the villains in the piece. And actually, we need to think about what's our positive narrative. They're frightened about the changes that some of the technologies bring in. They worry, and we shouldn't have that. So for me, modern work experience is a critical turning point in a young person's life, not a thing they have to do for 2 weeks and then, forget it ever happened.
Exactly.
I love that. Thank you so much. And I really like the phrase that you used there. I'm collecting a bit of a word cloud. I'm doing like an AI thing. But line of sight, I think that's so important. One of my kind of education heroes, who's one of my colleagues in the States, don't worry, I'm not going to do a Nashville accent. She always says, kids only put up their hands in high school for 2 reasons. First reason, can I go to the bathroom? Yeah. Second reason, when am I ever going to need to use this? And her view is, like, if you can't answer that question unless it's for the exam, you might as well stop the lesson. So that kind of line of sight point is just so important.
Yeah.
You're doing it because you might want to go into a career, and it's not because you're tying yourself to definitely working in healthcare, but it's like, oh, if you went on to become a nurse or a doctor, you'd need this to read the temperature chart or whatever it might be. Of course, then I'll get on and learn it. There's a reason. I think that's so powerful.
I will say, though, I do think that line of sight is great, and you're painting a different picture, and you want young people to paint themselves in that picture for themselves. But you have to enable them to do that, and I think it's the next layer of what are the intentional steps you have to do. And I think the experience of the workplace and modern work experience is brilliant. It's the right thing, but I also wouldn't want to overburden it as a policy to say it's going to fix everything. Because I think I've got a sense, just from reading some of the things, that we think it's going to transform and really shift some of that social deficit sometimes that we have. It's going to do something, and it's going to do it really well. Yeah. But what else do we need to think about?
Very good, and a nice way into. So we're going to open up the discussion now, pick up some of the questions, and the first one I wanted to come back to actually touches on that and touches on what you were saying, Emily. So you can tell that somebody's an education nerd when they have a favourite Gatsby benchmark. Mine is number 4. Getting those careers into the curriculum, but that is really important. Like what we're talking about here is exactly as you're saying, Nicola. Like we can't just have this as a separate thing. This needs to kind of get into every bit. So you said a little bit about this at the start, Emily, but I want to bring you back to, you know, if you were talking to other mat leads, other teachers, how do we start to really make a reality of what Nicola's suggesting?
Yeah, and I think, the Gatsby benchmark is there, isn't it? It makes it very explicit that we need to offer high-quality work experience. The new Ofsted framework is linked to, personal development and what we're really doing to equip our young people with, that holistic development. So I think that even if you were sceptical, there's enough of a reason as an educator to say we've actually really got to take this very seriously, because there is a recognition that maybe we're falling short in developing our young people for their next steps. But I don't think that we need much convincing, to be honest. I actually think that we see the return when young people have these experiences, when they are applying that knowledge in a way that they can see is a way in which they're going to need to work in later life or in the workplace. So I think what we are seeing is a shift in terms of how we perceive work experience to look. It's not just a 2-week one-off placement in one particular role. It's actually about a philosophy of thinking which says, what is the destination measure for our young people, and how do we really plan the journey well for that destination? And that therefore changes everything. It percolates new thinking. We're creating and curating a new way through an educational journey, which it will take some time to really be a prevalent aspect of how we set up our classrooms and run our academies and schools. But it's critical that we do look at it like that. And by having young people come back and talk about their experiences, ambassadors for particular careers, by having, lots of interest from local employers, from having schools offer, one-off events where they are looking at, the whole host of options that are available to young people, is an important way of just generally raising the profile.
I love that, and some really great practical steps in there for educators as well. Kathy, from the employer angle, you mentioned you work from primary all the way through. How have you seen that kind of transformation in the classrooms?
I think it is really important that you do embed it as part of, right from primary right through to secondary. So I think, one of the ambitions is that this programme isn't just at the sort of just before you go into the workforce. Modern experience, it is actually embedded throughout the career education, and I think some of the things that we're doing around, I guess that you don't come to KPMG for a full week, you come for a day, and if we can really build that up with a number of employers, then it means that they're getting regular experience as opposed to a one-off longer period of time, and I think that is really valuable. I think it is really important that we focus on those crucial skills, and so to your point, that the types of things we try to do as part of our Career Insights Day is talk about the skills and link them to where they may have experienced them already. So whether that's teamwork, so you're already using teamwork at school if you're playing as part of a sports team, for example, or when you do that maths question, that's actually all about problem solving. So, they may say, I'm never going to use that maths concept ever again, but actually it's more about what do you learn about how to approach that maths question. So I think thinking about the crucial skills and how you link them is really important. But the one thing we really appreciate as an employer is the huge pressure that is on schools and on teachers. And so how do we really make the modern work experience accessible? And we do that through working with bodies like CEC to ensure that we're focusing on areas where it's not as accessible. So the sort of underserved students, how do we ensure that they are accessing the insights? I think that is really important. And then the final bit is around collaborating with others, and really how do we use our network as a large employer to broaden out the insights and helping students get access to more experience and more skills as part of that.
Perfect. And Nicola, Obby, did either of you want to come in on that particular issue around Obby?
I was just going to give some stats. So, for example, when post-surveys of when we've run sort of delivered work experience events, we see young people talking about, we see confidence in speaking with professionals rise by 18%, career awareness rise by 58%, a real understanding of workplace skills by 34%. So in terms of those, the leadership, teamwork, skills that employers want to see, but also that they can apply back in school. There's that real connection.
I love that. Really, really powerful evidence. So, picking up the kind of theme of kind of place-based that we've talked about a little bit, I wanted to get that into a bit more detail there, and again, start to think practically, particularly for colleagues who might be listening and thinking, like, how do I do some of that? So, back to you, and thinking a bit about kind of careers hubs. What do you do locally to kind of bring this to bear, make this a reality?
It's a very good question. I'm just thinking that was not how I expect. I think we're looking at it in two ways, our careers hub. So one of the strengths of the Greater Manchester Careers Hub, I think, is that it's flexible and agile. The way we've built it from the start was how do we build it into our structures that exist rather than trying to add it on and make a system more clunky. So I think that's been really helpful. So it effectively has transformed into a place-based careers hub, and it responds to the different community spaces and clusters schools and colleges together. It comes together as a network. It leads into the national. I think it's built with really rigorous data and knowledge of who's where, which schools and colleges have the highest levels of deprivation. How do you map the business base around that? What do we understand about the families that live there as well in terms of the worklessness, health challenges? So we have a really granular picture, and so when we work with our kind of community of practice, we call it, we're looking at how we transfer knowledge and learning so that what's happening locally feeds through, but it responds from that community-led lens. So I think the structural setup we've got has been a labour of love. It's been a long, and we're still learning, but I think it's ensuring a much more agile delivery based on what we know our employers are saying that they need. And we can marry national policy with local policy drivers and still deliver the same outcomes. So I think that's been important. And I think there's probably something about, I heard the word belonging, about we're trying to think about cohesion, we're trying to think about how do young people see themselves being part of the success story that happens at a regional level. I mean, we've got Manchester, it's a massive, shiny city centre, and we kind of use that as the beacon of like, oh, you know, who wants to go and work there? But actually, in some ways, that narrative diminishes some of the fantastic opportunities that are in some of the other towns and localities where there are some brilliant jobs, just invisible.
Yeah.
So we have to get that balance. So that's some of the work that we do. But I think more and more we're looking at it as not purely from the journey, but using the careers hub as an economic tool, in effect, to think about how we shape that future workforce, but in a very intentional way rather than scaling up and making it universal. So I think that's how we're using the hub, when it's not a thing in and of itself.
That's really helpful, Nicola. And Emily, is thinking about your reflections on Stoke, Staffordshire, where you work, how have you kind of built that community of local businesses who are involved in your schools?
So we collaborate now far more widely with other leaders, not just in education, but across the sector. It's all about being intentional, isn't it? It's really about co-constructing something which you know feeds into the local area priorities. So the careers hub sit at the table, they have those conversations with us, so do, you know, the other stakeholders that really just want to see a lively, dynamic space for young people to have opportunities in. So it's less about working independently as in your own space. It's more about making those connections, and you know, it was said it's relational. It's about, you know, those discussions that can lead to opportunities that maybe you didn't imagine were there. So I think, you know, we've been lucky to have Equilex as the framework to work within, and what that has really done is encourage us and prompt us to think about those partners that we can, you know, we can draw on their expertise to enrich the experience that we're offering in our schools. And it's early days, but we can see that that's just, you know, it's the right thing to be doing, because our children only know what they know. So if we're not bringing in, you know, the awareness of what exists for them and how they can, you know, they can take those steps, then we're doing them a disservice. So I
think that's really powerful, and I think you know, Greater Manchester is an example of what can be best in kind of those combined authorities and the role that you can play in place shaping. I have a worry, which I'm not going to get into now, but I'm kind of concerned about the coastal and rural areas that maybe don't have Andy Burnham knocking on doors to kind of open things up. And we really want to make sure, if we're talking about equity, that we look through that lens as well, that we make sure that we're kind of making sure that young people in all of those areas, whether digitally or physically, get the kind of same opportunities as well. So one for us to keep thinking about there. But
sorry, I was just going to say, I think as part of the curriculum and assessment review as well, as we're seeing that there's a move to to looking at oracy, for instance, which is fundamental. It's a pivotal skill that children are going to need to be able to have that agency to represent themselves. Careers is there, digital literacy, the skills that we have, we're routinely talking about are needed and necessary. So I think we're seen as a sector as well that we are alert to some of those issues that are potentially inhibiting some of our young people.
Absolutely. I wanted to turn a little bit to the role of employers, and it feels like there's a real opportunity with some of the larger employers like yourself, Kath, to not just be offering the opportunities that you talked about, but also be kind of systems leaders in the way that Emily just talked about, to be drawing your supply chain, your smaller businesses in. How do you go about that kind of relationship?
I think you're absolutely right. I think the one thing I would say is very true is that it's never going to be down to just one employer, right? So there is an ecosystem. It's small, medium, large employers, it's government, it's third sector, it's schools, it's teachers. And I think actually what we've got much better at, and I think what we've been doing as part of Opening Doors, is really leaning into the ecosystem and how do we build that out to ensure that everybody is involved. As a large employer, I think we are very privileged in that we have the capacity to deliver Opening Doors. We have a fantastic team at KPMG. I can see Claire sitting towards the back of the room. I have an amazing team that I work with around how we deliver that. So we've been able to bring 500,000 students through our doors. We've had 16,000 students at those sort of career insights days. So we have the sort of, I guess, what you would call the machine to be able to facilitate that. And it's really important we use that knowledge and we use our experience to talk to other employers. So we do a lot of that. As part of the pilot we ran over the summer that I talked about, where we had a joint initiative, we've brought one very large employer in who has never worked in this space before. I have a very strong network of clients. I think it's probably getting round now that if you've got a meeting with Kath Burnett, she's probably going to ask you to be part of the modern work experience. So it's really important that we use that network, and we do a lot of both asking other employers to be part of the project, but also just talking to them about the experiences we've had and how the other bodies that we work with, whether it's the Talent Foundry or whether it's the skills network, that we talk about what other support is out there actually in terms of how it's not just up to you. There's a lot of support through all of the bodies we've talked about today, which can really help you facilitate that. And then the final thing I would say is we have as a responsibility in employers, and you've talked a little about this, Emily, we have a responsibility to talk about what the skills are that we need and be really clear about that. Digital literacy absolutely is something that's really important, and we're actually educating our people on that right now. But as we use AI more and we use technology more, those human-centric skills are actually almost becoming more important. Being able to talk about the AI, how you use it properly, is becoming absolutely critical. So we have got a role to work both with government, with CEC, with schools, with teachers, to talk about what are the skills we think we're going to need. Because I think somebody else said, this is not at the fault of the young people. It's actually how do we, as bodies, work together to ensure that we're articulating what the skills are that we're going to need.
I love that. It's really important. And I think, again, it's one of those things where, as adults, as policymakers, we tend to kind of stereotype or take a view of young people. Oh, they're all using AI. When I was talking about it with I run a scout group outside work, and I was talking about it with them last night, and they were all so onto the environmental impact. They were like, every question's a gallon of water. Like that was their main take. And I thought it was just such an
how do we manage that
absolutely
aspect of it?
And Obby, you've done lots of work with various businesses about this area, about kind of bringing an equity lens to it. So tell us a little bit about kind of your experiences there.
I mean, I think we really talk about the sort of the social value, because I think big, larger businesses like KPMG obviously have the capacity. And when you look at smaller sort of SMEs, one of the things we hear a lot is we don't have the capacity, we don't have time, resource. So, and that's where organizations like, Uptree come in, because we can be that end-to-end solution, whether it's, doing the outreach, partnering with schools, bringing schools onto our platform, then they're sort of taking them through the sort of application process, and then into employers. So I think we try often to show the value in that, because sometimes people really focus on just the ROI. It's very expensive. But also, I think we're seeing less traditional approaches, things like one day, just one work experience day. We recently worked with a small business that brought in about 20 students for one day, and it was just life-changing for young people, but also very enriching for the employees who were sort of facilitating the experience day. So I think it's really working with businesses to just remove the barriers that exist, and that's kind of the work that we've been doing. But I think one of the things we also talk about is the attractiveness as an employer. So to give you a sort of stat, post that survey that the work experience event we did, the employer's attractiveness increased by 121%. And the young people said they would want to come back. So if you're thinking about sort of future-wise, not just the immediate, those young people might be leading your organization in 10 years, but they will remember. So it's that investment, but and as we've talked about also at a community level as well. So I think we really work hard to sort of sell that journey and take employers on that journey, but also sharing stories and case studies, I think is something that that has helped us as well to drive the message.
Absolutely, those things stick around, don't they? But also that those young people will be talking in positive terms about those businesses to their friends, to their family. That's all to the good. I love that point. Emily, Nicola, do you want to say anything about kind of small business engagement from your side?
Not that. Can I just bring some?
Absolutely.
Is there something on this?
The politician's answer. You answer a different question, Nicola. That's a key skill.
I did some media training last week.
Nice.
Pivot back to the purpose. It was about the skills piece, and I think the role that the local skills improvement plans can play in terms of the quality of those documents and how well. So we were talking about the one that currently is in existence. Think about digital skills. It has a lot around coding and so the stuff that you'd expect to see. But what we're expecting to see in the next one, that's all news. It's all about the kind of AI, cybersecurity side of things. So within a space of 2 years, that's really, really different. So how do you then respond agilely enough in a curriculum sense and through those experiences? And is it that you have to interrogate those. Are they really the skills that we're looking for young people? And will they be relevant to young people now? So we'll go all out on it, when actually we have to exercise caution about jumping on the bandwagon of some of this kind of, because it's an immediate pressing worry for employees, I get it. But we have to just think about careful consideration of, well, how are we introducing that to young people and how do we plan that through? And that ethical side of AI is, again, really interesting. So I just wanted to say that the role of the LSIP is important, but it's not the be-all and end-all, and I think we have to just be, cool about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen that writ large with coding, haven't we? A few years ago, that was the thing to do. And now AI is taking a lot of the coding jobs and that's not this. Emily?
I think just picking up on that, I think you've got to, you've really got to be intentional in the structures that keep that partnership as strong as it can be. So one of the things that we're looking to do, and we've started to do, is to match employers with our departments so that there's that ongoing conversation. Yeah. So as skills, will evolve, there is that relationship and that connection so that it's two-way and it's fluid and it doesn't just be a set of, prescribed things that are decided on one day, that actually it remains alive and agile and so on. So, and the other thing that we've looked to do is to put in career encounters for our staff. So again, without any administration or, heavy paperwork, that they can go out and they get a lens and they get an insight into what that world of work looks like, and then they can come back and they can just have that additional expertise and share that practice. And, you know, in regard to AI, we've developed a curriculum as a trust, but not because we want our children just to have the skills of how to do the prompt engineering and, you know, be cognizant with Grok and all of the other, you know, technologies that are emerging, but because we want to teach them how to live well with it. And we want to put the focus on the human in the loop and the attributes and characteristics that they're going to need in order to function really well with, you know, technology that's moving so quickly. You know, I think just today what we're sensing is that the conversation between employers and partners and educators is what will make this, you know, a real success for our young people, because, you know, we heard on the film there's an imperative there, isn't there? There's a very real moral imperative to make sure that we do this.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think those teacher encounters are an important part of this ecosystem as well. So one of the best ones of those I remember seeing was actually sending an English teacher out to an engineering company, so a bit different, and he was looking at how they explain their engineering topics in really clear, simple terms. So not always the kind of obvious links, but some of those kind of those elements too. So just as we move through this discussion, I wanted to give my panellists a heads up. So I'm going to come back to you all just at the end to tell us a little bit about where you'd like us to get to in 10 years. So I'll let that percolate. But we're going to grab one other big topic just before we do that, and I'm going to come to you first on this, Obby. But this equity angle, like we've talked about it a lot, and we've maybe paid a bit of lip service to it in the past. How do we really get into that this time? How do we make this work for disadvantaged young people, those from the postcodes, as we've been talking about, who might not have got the opportunities otherwise?
I mean, data, I think, is certainly important to have. So one of the things when we partner with employers is really understanding things like, you know, free school meals. How many, you know, where are you targeting? Are you targeting areas where there's high deprivation? In the sort of cohort of students that you want to bring on, ideally you want to ensure that you're not excluding people who don't have access. Are you providing transportation to your work experience events? Are you ensuring that they're basically removing any barriers that exist as much as possible, but also then thinking about, you know, the fact that some young people are not career ready. They may not have had the experience in terms of whether it's CV writing or just even how to talk to people in a professional setting. So not really setting them up for success, whether you're, you know, running, a lot of employers will run sort of workshops prior to work experience events, so that young people know what to expect, how to, you know, like the girl said on the video, how to even just conduct herself, how do you speak to people. So we do a lot of that facilitation just to make sure that, again, in terms of design, that you're designing a work experience event with a young person or young people in mind, and particularly that those who are most underrepresented, you know, have access.
So important. Kath, do you want to say a bit about the communities you work in, because you must...
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally agree. Maybe it's the sort of auditor in me, but I totally agree. Data is so important, and that we use that to guide us as to where you know, the access is maybe lowest and where we can really focus to ensure that we have an impact. I think as an employee, it's absolutely all the things that you talked about, that we design the experience in the right way, we focus on the right things, the right skills. And another thing for me is ensuring that we have the right people from the business involved. So it's all very well for me to kick off an event like that, and they're all sitting thinking, right, you're older than my mum. But actually, we use a lot of apprentices. So we bring in 50% apprentices, 50% grads every year, and we use a lot of our apprentices to help lead those workshops and the experience, and that way they feel much closer in terms of, actually, I can see myself you know, this person works at KPMG or works at one of the other businesses. I can actually see myself doing that, and I think that is actually really important to ensure that it feels inclusive and they feel, actually, yeah, I could be here this time 3 years' time, sort of thing.
I love that. There's a really great initiative in Sheffield where I've been an enterprise advisor called See It, Be It, and it's exactly that. Like, if you can't see it, you can't be it. We all know that, which is great. And those near-peer connections are really important. But also those really clear, and we've all talked about this, kind of connections directly from what's being done in the workplace to subjects at school. So, you know, you're not sitting in a random lesson thinking, when am I ever going to need to use this? You're thinking, oh, I heard about when, you know, an auditor was using maths, for instance.
And actually, you know, you touched on it as well, their teachers come with them to those experiences. So they hear those links. So when they, you know, we've had a number of educators say us, actually, that was really valuable for me, because when I go back to the classroom, I'm much more confident about articulating the links between the skills and what I'm teaching in the classroom. So I think that's a really important part of it.
Emily, Nicola, anything on this equity lens you wanted to mention?
I think, you know, we've just got to make sure that we're capturing student voice as well along the way, that actually, you know, we can miss children in our system that haven't had a meaningful encounter experience. You know, we've got to keep an eye on destination measures and not just assume that cohorts are moving in a particular way. So I think it's really important that we listen well to what young people are telling us. Actually, you know, is what are their interests, their ambitions, their aspirations, you know, what do they want to find out more about, and therefore we need to respond potentially in a more personalised way to some of that, and I think that will be the strength of a model that will really empower every young person, that we will sort of break down some of the assumptions that we know automatically what route through that young person is going to take.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, if I could, I think there's something, I absolutely agree, data's one thing, I think, but the data that's available to us perhaps doesn't really tell us about, because careers advice and guidance, as we all know, it's a very personal journey, it's very unique to where you are at that moment in time, and it happens all of the time, not just in those interventions. So I think those insights from those, either whether you're in a community, whether you're in the school as part of that community, I think that's really important, that we think about the focus and we ask them what they need, so you can design it with them to do that. Because there are quite differences in geography, there are differences in, you know, one community, you know, one school to like the one down the road. It's so different, isn't it? So I think that's really important. We use our equalities panels to take kind of, especially with the MBAC, we're saying, like, we've got this idea, we want to do equal X. How do you think we should develop this policy? And they challenge, we've had a lot of challenge. But I think the flip side of that is when we're thinking about who is this programme most relevant to, what more do we want to give them? It's not the same for that young person as it is for that. So where does the quality assurance come from? Like, where's the challenge in that? Who have you been working with? Why those young people? Why that school, for example? Because when we look at all of this and track through, my worry still is it's all really brilliant, but we still have a really high youth unemployment challenge, 16 to 24. So something is still not working in terms of young people then taking that step through the door. And one of the things that we've been trying to test, and this is a kind of organisation-wide, is how do we change our recruitment practices to invite more people to apply, remove some of those barriers that we put up in some of that recruitment. So we're testing a little bit of that, and it's really reaped rewards in terms of the diversity of young person that we're getting working for us in the organisation.
Really.
So I think there are some other things we could consider as well.
I love that. This has been a really wide-ranging discussion, so I want to finish on a positive note, and I want to just ask you each just to give us a couple of sentences on where you'd like us to be in kind of 5-10 years. We're going to come down, starting with Nicola.
So I think we definitely need to have much improved system structures in place that are set up so that you do have those young people with agency. And I think we need to ask ourselves, what does that actually look like? What would good look like? And what would the young people, what would they say about that? So that they can really paint themselves into a success story. They have hope and optimism. And then they have clearly that line of sight to the good jobs in the economy that they choose to work in, whether that's local, national, global.
Love it. Thank you. Olly.
I think for us, it's basically seeing our mission achieved. And again, also our mission is to see employers everywhere offer unique experiences of work to demystify careers and help students as they transition from education to employment. And on a sort of professional level, we've been going for 10 years. I think our mission now, and next work that we want to do is to innovate. We see the power of data, so we're working on an outcome intelligence platform, and that essentially we want that to be able to measure real impact. You know, so things like tracking changes in confidence, student perception, not just attendance, but we also want to see that learner journey. You know, from first engagement to employment. We want to be able to provide our employers with dashboards that will be predictive in its analysis, so they can act speedier. And I think lastly, you know, we want to be able to look at things like interventions regionally. So that's our mission, and that's what we're working on next 3 to 5 years.
Amazing. Thank you, Olly. Emily.
I was just reading the mission for the Careers and Enterprise Company to help every young person find the next next best step. And I think that is, that underpins what I would say is really important. Every young person leaving school feeling inspired, informed and ready for the world of work. I think, we are looking to our employers to work alongside to say, how do we construct the most meaningful experience, which really does, enable all of our young people to see what the art of the possible looks like.
Love that. And Kath?
10 years is quite a long time. I think I go back to that, we have to achieve that aim, it is making sure that the ecosystem works in collaboration. I would love that in 10 years' time, every single employer was offering some kind of form of modern work experience, supported by bodies like OVIs in terms of, the ones that need extra help. I think having that common language of that has buy-in from employers, schools, and the young people around what the skills are that we're trying to build is really important. And I guess from a personal point of view, if it's 10 years, then if I've got an ambition of 1 million by 2030, then in 10 years it's got to be 10 million.
I love it.
I can see Claire panicking at the back. But I think we've all got to be ambitious about how we support and how we work together to really help young people achieve their absolutely best ambition.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was such an inspirational discussion. There were a couple of things that I picked and I just wanted to draw out. So one was my little word cloud. So I was noting down things that kept coming back. So hope, equity, line of sight, meaningful, relevant, unique. These are all things that we know kind of characterise the really good work experience placement. So kind of making sure that we're thinking about those kind of quality standards. And the other thing that really struck me as we were talking was there's a potential here for this to be a win-win-win in two different ways. So it's a win-win-win for the young person, the teacher and the employer. Yeah. You've all talked passionately about, obviously it's about young people and we heard that in the video, but actually if we do it right, it can be more fun, it can be more engaging for the teacher. Yeah. They can be going on work experience themselves and kind of re-engaging about why they're doing their career, and it can be really good for the employer, for your apprentices, for your new starters, for people gaining management skills. I always like it when we have work experience students as well, because people get to describe what we do, and even that is like, because you're in the day job the whole time, and then you just get to zoom out and you're like, actually I do quite a cool job, and it's like it kind of reinvigorates the team. But also for me it's also a win-win-win in the sense that it's giving kind of academic and vocational skills, because they're kind of seeing those in action. It's giving those employability, those skills builder skills that employers tell us that they want, which is great, and it's giving us those people those life skills as well. So we want our neighbours, our kids, our nieces and nephews to be good communicators and problem solvers. So it's a kind of a win-win in that respect as well. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to just say who's coming up next, and then we'll do a big round of applause for the team. So can I welcome to the stage Nicola Hall, who's Director of Education at the Careers and Enterprise Company, and Riley Sweeney, who's one of the fantastic youth board members, just to reflect on this panel. And while they make their way up, can I have a big round of applause for my excellent.
So, wow. Where do we even start with that conversation this morning? So Riley and I have got the unenviable task of trying to reflect on what we've just heard over the last hour, and that's always a challenge when we run these seminar conversations, but today I think it's without a doubt the hardest one that I've ever done, because the conversation has been so rich. I think for me, the takeaway for me is that ultimately in this arena, when we're trying to change more than 40 years worth of tradition when it comes to work experience, and yet the world of work, as we've heard, is moving every single day, what really matters in terms of getting this right is leadership. And we've absolutely heard that leadership message on the stage today. This isn't the job of a single careers leader in a school to suddenly make this happen for 1,000 children. This is to be set and to be deliberate by design. And I absolutely think that we've heard that today. We've heard all the words that Olly summarised, actually, the same words that I've written down about being meaningful, being deliberate, being relevant, being purposeful for young people. But what I've also really heard as well is the importance of that intentional curriculum for young people, making the curriculum fun and unique for every single person. As a head teacher, I presided over years and years of work experience programmes, and I thought I was doing the right thing. Absolutely thought I was doing the right thing. But what I know now, with the privilege of being able to think about this topic every single day is that actually those programmes created gaps. And the people who needed those programmes more fell through those gaps. And that's why we've got a collective responsibility to do something different in this space and really think about building programmes that are responsive to every single young person. And I believe that that's what we've heard today. So I'm going to introduce Riley, who is an incredible force at the Careers and Enterprise Company. And she's an incredible force because she is the voice of young people across the country. So, Riley, I'm going to give you a couple of moments to introduce yourself and explain how we've been working together over the last couple of years.
Thank you, Nicola. So, like Nicola said, I'm Riley, and I am a youth board member at the moment, but I did previously be involved in the YAG. So I've been involved in the YAG for 3 years, really trying to bring my lived experience and other young people's experiences to the forefront of the decisions that we make, and making sure that young people are at the heart of everything that we do. Because I had quite a unique experience where I massively struggled in my first years of education. I disengaged completely. And that was because I was that student who always put my hands up and said, but why are we learning this? I was one of those, Ollie. And no one could answer. And I was like, well, but why am I doing this and when am I going to need it? So I just switched off, and I had the fantastic opportunity in year 10 to move to a technical college, and that massively changed because when I put my hands up and I challenged, I got the answer. This is why, and this is when you're going to use it. And they brought that curriculum to life in an intentional way and brought skills through the curriculum and employers through the curriculum, which really allowed me to understand, well, this is why I'm learning this, and this is why I need it, and this is how it connects to my future. And that was massive for me. And as well as kind of it being embedded in the curriculum, I got lots of experience with employers to engage in different industries, different job roles. And that experience was transformational, which is why I was so passionate about coming to work with Careers Enterprise Company, to make sure that I can share my experience of what actually education looks like without careers education, which I can tell you is not great, and the experience of having a really great careers curriculum and experience.
So I'll just remind anybody that doesn't know Riley and hasn't met her before that she's 19 and she makes these kind of speeches for breakfast every day on an international stage, let alone a London stage. And that in itself is utterly remarkable, but it's also partly because of the experience she's had through her education and the building of skills and the way that we have described that this morning. Riley, what was a real highlight from the discussion for you this morning?
I think intentional was mentioned a lot, and I really resonate with that because when I reflect on my experience at UTC, everything we did was intentional, and it was a culture, and it wasn't just a careers leader's job. Actually, it was everyone's job, and from a teacher assistant to a head teacher to our trustees to the employers who were in our network, it was everyone's collective job to make sure that we were prepared when we left school. So I think that word intentional really resonated, because I wouldn't have had my experience if it wasn't for the culture and the space that was created by the leadership team and the local businesses that really allowed, I guess, me to have the experiences and the other young people in that school to have them experience as well. So that the word intentional really resonated.
So we've seen in the room today that one of the most, I suppose, one of the biggest features of this room today is that it's very mixed. It's an absolute blend of educators, industry leaders, policymakers, stakeholders, partners, providers that are helping to develop and deliver this agenda. For you, Riley, what's the one thing around that will stimulate system change forever?
So I think it is that culture and making sure that it's a collective effort from everybody. I think when we look at, yes, there's great experiences out there and some young people are having fantastic opportunities, but it can't be relied on a course board lottery. And we need to make sure that everyone is in the kind of going away with some action of like, we know that everyone knows the value of careers education. We can see the impact of it. Some people are doing some great work, and of those who are, who can you take with you? Who can you then bring in and see this world? But I think for young people, it's making sure that their journey is kind of consistent, and that we're giving them from year 7 all the way through to year 11 a consistent experience of having them work experience, having a curriculum that brings it to life, and a space to reflect, a space to really take away what they've learned, because they can have all the skills in the world, but if they can't talk about it and they can't sit in front of an employer and explain what them skills are, then they can't connect that then and translate it. So I think it's about making sure that we have a consistent journey for young people into that transition, and then bringing everyone with us.
So let's just take our minds back to Libby. Libby is the young person that we saw on the film at the start of today's event. And that's the first time we've shown this film, so lots of people at scale will have seen that with you this morning for the very first time. And I think it's important that we go back to Libby's message about how easy it would be for this to fail, because it's hard. Nobody sets out to transform a system and make really systemic change without expecting challenges along the way. And without us knowing that it's hard. Of course, there are barriers in the way. If there weren't, we'd have done this 30 years ago. So it's our responsibility to get those barriers, pick them up and lift them and shift them out of the way. And we do that by taking action. And we do that by making sure that as leaders in the room, we're able to take decisions that are brave and that move those barriers out of the way. So in the context of Libby and in the context of Riley, how can you reinforce that message live here in the room today that Libby gave us at the start this morning?
I think it's really important that we do reflect back to young people's voices, because they are the lives that we're trying to change, and that is what we're doing it for. Everything that we're doing, we're here today for young people. So I think it's really important that we do reflect back, and like Libby said, we don't want to be put in a box, and I felt like I was put in a box when I was at mainstream school, and I got let out my box when I was at UTC, and I think that's what careers education does. It gives young people to see beyond their postcode. It gives them the opportunity to get out that box and gain confidence, skills, experience, and the agency to go and do something about their own futures. And I think that's what's really important. And that's what resonated when Libby said, because I get it. I was put in that box too. And I think careers education opens that box.
Great. Thank you, Riley. So I'm going to wrap up the discussion now for today, and in a moment I'm going to hand back to Nikki to finish off this segment of the event. I want to thank our panel again for your amazing contributions, literally inspirational for me and for the room, I'm sure, this morning, and for our huge online audience. What we need to do now is think about what comes next. I urge everybody online in the room to really think about your connections with your local careers hub. They are there to support you and have a series of resources that are being developed every single day in order for us to help get this right. But this mission, and Olly summed it up as what do we want to see in 10 years' time, this mission is a generational mission. And sometimes we have to exercise professional patience to get that generational mission right. We don't have all the answers right here, right now. We're still testing and we're still piloting. The Pilot 1 findings are remarkable, but they continue, and they continue at pace into Pilot 2. Bigger, more young people, more employers, and more innovation. And we have to keep moving with that as we go. So if you're inspired by today's discussion, we encourage you to join us on that national movement, to join us on LinkedIn, and to pledge your support and commitment to modern work experience. And there will be details posted in the chat for those of you who are online, but over the course of the next week or so, you will see really significant activity on our social media channels really gaining some momentum underneath this space. And the final thing I want to do is just remind you to take your insight report away with you today and really think about what parts of that insight report resonate with you, no matter what your piece of this jigsaw is. And believe me, it's a 1,000-piece jigsaw that we're putting together every day, bit by bit by bit. So from me, and I've been working on this solidly for 2 years, from me, thank you so much for being in the room, and thank you and online, and thank you so much to the partners, schools and employers who have really taken us with great impetus to this particular place in this long-term journey. So thank you.
Well, yes, it's my job just to draw this part of our morning, the live broadcast, to a conclusion. Can I thank you, Nicola and Riley? You have given us a timely and very powerful reminder of the urgent call to action on delivering what young people truly need from system leaders, and your call for people to sign up to the pledge is incredible. Riley, no one's ever going to put you in a box again. And on behalf of CEC board and team, I really do want to thank, there's been lots of people behind this, but I do want to thank Nicola, who has worked absolutely tirelessly as our Director of Education on delivering EqualX, the pilots, and the vision for modern work experience. Nicola, thank you. You have been inspirational. I also want to thank Olly and all of our panellists, to Kath, to Obi, to Emily, and to Nicola. Olly, that was so expertly facilitated. Thank you so much. And there was just such a lot in that great conversation that people will take away with you. And can I thank you all for joining online as well? We're going to say in a moment thank you and farewell to those who are joining us online through the live broadcast. But it has been fantastic to have so many people signed up and joining us today. I think events like this really just show the convening power and the growing interest in modern work experience. So let's make it work. Thank you.